Okay, now we're going to talk about some of the mean things that we did to each other as kids growing up. And I call it mean. I don't think any of them we were trying to hurt anybody or be mean. We were just not being very careful like kids do sometimes. And I might mention that my mom and dad both worked and we kind of raised ourselves. So if you can imagine 4 boys on a farm raising themselves with nobody around, since we didn't have neighbors, you can get away with quite a bit. And so that's maybe the preface to this. That the first one I'll talk about is the time, I might mention we used to have rock fights when I was little. We used to actually divide up into teams and throw rocks at each other. And I realize that sounds terrible now, but that wasn't that big a deal when I grew up. At least it wasn't for me and my friends. This particular time, Race had another friend over and we were out in the woods on a big hill kind of area, and we decided to start throwing rocks at Race and his friend. And we started out just with, rocks about this big that wouldn't kill you or anything, but they just hurt if they hit you. Throwing these rocks at both of them, and they were yelling and screaming and trying to get away, but they were probably laughing too. I don't know if we were trying real hard to hit them or just scare them, but we probably were trying to hit them now that I think about it. And they're running along this hill. They found a cave and they hid inside of it. And so then we thought, oh, now they don't have any way to get out. So we got up above the cave and started throwing more rocks down. And then to show that we were at least a little careful, Rick found this big rock about this big. But he actually did say, "Don't come out, here comes a real big one," and he threw it down the hill. And just as he threw it, Race came out, I think to hear what Rick was yelling. And he comes out of the cave and looks up to see where we are and what Rick's yelling about. And just as he looks up, that big rock hits him in the forehead. The main thing I can remember is we were walking him back to the house, that you could actually see his skull through the wound. But yeah, he got quite a few stitches with that one. That's when we were teenagers. When we were younger, I can remember, I think maybe I've mentioned him here, I don't remember. We used to love to play with fire. Grayson and Hadley don't listen to this. I can remember we used to get lighter fluid and set our arms on fire. And then we would try to wave them real hard to put the fire out because we thought that was neat. And we also made Molotov cocktails that we would fill up bottles with gasoline and stuff a rag in it and light the rag on fire and then throw them into the desert and watch them land and explode with the gasoline. And that was just for fun. Nobody got hurt. But the one time I did hurt was, again, my little brother Race. I think I was maybe 6 years old and Race was 4 or 5 or something. Both my parents were gone again. And my dad had this, I think it was like a big jar for some reason of gasoline that he kept in the garage for the mower. Which is a dumb place to keep gasoline, but anyway, I convinced Race that it would be neat if we threw a match in that thing of gasoline, we could dance around the fire. And so Race, being younger than me, I thought it was a good idea. I didn't expect him to get hurt. Anyway, he threw a match in there. It kind of halfway explodes and ended up burning Race really bad. And, for all the times I was punished or beaten in my life, I don't even remember getting in trouble for this one. But anyway, when my parents got home, they had to rush him to the doctor's office because he had some pretty bad burns. Another time, Race, we had a tree house, one of the neater tree houses in the area. It was actually, there were 4 trees growing kind of close together, and we put sides on it and a floor and a ladder to climb up to it, and we built this really neat tree house. But we were trying to add to it one day, but I needed to cut down a tree and skim the branches off. I don't know what we were trying to add, but anyway, I convinced Race that it was too hard for me to hold this big long pole and cut the branches off, so he ought to hold it for me. And so I had him holding this pole while I'm whacking at this big pole with a hatchet, and all of a sudden it hits the wood and bounces off, comes over and hits him right in the knee, and once again cuts down to his kneecap. I don't remember how many stitches, but quite a few. So once again he had to go to the doctor's office and get stitches. Let's see, what else was there? Oh, the time I hit him with a car. Actually, I didn't hit him with a car. I was in the car, though, with my friend. That we were going to go to a football game, but we had to run to my house to grab some stuff before we left on the bus for the football game. It was an away game. So we went home and we're driving the car back to school. It's on a dirt road, and there was this corner you come around that was kind of blind. You couldn't see very well. And to tell you the truth, people on old dirt roads usually drive in the middle of the road instead of staying on one side like you're supposed to. But I remember saying shortly before that I wonder if we'll run into my brother Race on the way home, because he was coming home on his motorcycle and we were driving back to school in the car. Just as we come around that corner, we hit Race head on, the motorcycle and the car, and throws Race off the motorcycle. He flies up and hits the front windshield of the car, and then bounces off the windshield and bounces back in front of the car. And the part I remember the most was we must have hit him going fast enough that it completely jerked his shoes off of his feet, that he was laying there without his shoes on, and his shoes were laying on the ground where we hit him. Anyway, we got him into the car, and they didn't have ambulances out in the middle of the countryside. You had to take him to the hospital yourself. We threw him in the back of the car. First thing I remember, we're driving along, and I look back, and we're both in the front seat, my friend and I look back to see if my brother's okay in the back seat, and he's gone. Was my first thought. And then I look down on the floor and see that he's rolled off onto the floor. And I can't remember if we stopped and put him back on the seat or just left him down on the floor. And it could be he fell on the floor. I think maybe I've got these out of order. I think right before that happened, the hood on my friend's car popped up, so it covered the windshield because the hood was kind of broken from the car wreck. And it popped up so that he couldn't see it all, to which I expected my friend would put on his brakes. But after a couple of seconds of him just driving along and he couldn't even see, I remember exactly what I yelled at him was, "Stop, you idiot!" And so I think he slammed on his brakes, and I think that's when Race fell onto the floor probably. Anyway, we took him to a neighbor, and the neighbors took him to the doctors. I don't know if, I remember he had a broken leg or broken arm or both. And I think he might have spent a day in the hospital, I don't remember. Anyway, it kind of makes you wish you had grown up as my little brother, doesn't it? I do remember hurting Rick once, that our neighbors had this gate that they kept it closed with a rock about this big. And I can't remember what crazy game we were playing. I think but whatever game it was, I remember taking that rock and hucking it over the gate to the other side. And I didn't know my brother was standing on the other side getting ready to come through the gate. And he got hit in the head with it. But I don't think it was as bad as the time that my brother got hit in the head with a rock. Or maybe I was just more worried because Race was my little brother that I loved so much and would never hurt him on purpose. Just like Grace and I know you would never hurt Hadley on purpose. Anyway, that's my story of reckless teenagers. I've probably got more, but that's for today. That's all.